we have a quorum. I call to order the meeting of the subcommittee. In the 2025 session, as at the last meeting, we approved 18 projects. The total allocation is $77.4538 billion. On the agenda today, we have two papers for discussion. The papers, the items in particular, were carried over from the last meeting on 4th of June. The allocation involved is in total $13.1291 billion. If both funding proposals are approved today by members, the total number of approved projects will become 20. The total allocation will be $90.5829 billion, excluding the block allocation for land acquisition and computerization, that is $27.3407 billion. The total allocation for works projects is $63.2422 billion. I remind members that in accordance with Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure, members should disclose the nature of any direct or indirect pecuniary interests relating to the items under discussion at the meeting before they speak on the items. I also draw members' attention to Rule 84 on voting in case of direct pecuniary interest. Agenda item number 3399DS, relocation of Shenzhen sewage treatment works to caverns. The paper number is PWSC 2025-26-8. This paper proposes the upgrading of the remainder of 399DS to Category A at an estimated cost of $12.9304 billion in money of the day prices. The administration consulted the panel on development for this proposal on 15th of July 2024, and the members of the panel supported submitting the funding proposal by the administration to this subcommittee for consideration. The deliberations of the discussions of the panel have been sent to members via email on 2nd of June 2025. I will not talk about specifically who are going to attend this meeting because these are set out in the agenda. I will now read out the order in which members are going to speak. Mr. Qianhai, Mr. Li Chen-kung, Mr. Lim Chen-sing, Mr. Stanley Li, Mr. Lau Pop-fan, Dr. Lo Wai-kop, Mr. Kenneth Fogg, Mr. Chen Siu-hong, Mr. Luk Chung-hong, Mr. Kok Wai-kau, outside 4-minute time limit. Mr. Qianhai. Thank you, Chair. I speak in support of this proposal. For this proposal, the Council has been consulted a few times, and we're at the final stretch of the project. I want to ask, the administration by this stage should know when the project will be completed. I do see in the paper there are several milestones in 2026. The main caverns works will be completed, and 2029 we will have the reprovisioning of the sewage treatment works, and then in 2031 the site of the existing sewage treatment works will be released. And I know that in future this site may be connected to the science park area so that we will have a connected harbor front. You said the works are undertaken in parallel, so maybe you are already doing something at the Shenzhen site to develop offices. So when can we use the site for INT uses? That's my concern. And in 2031, is it the case that we will have fully commissioned the facilities in the cavern? Is this a deadline? If you can, as much as possible, compress the timeline, release the site, that would be appreciated. Mr. David Lam, Undersecretary. Thank you for the questions. Right now, as for when the site will be released, let me first talk about the process. We have a sewage treatment works serving the area, so we can only have the new sewage treatment works commissioned before we can decommission the existing site. And we are thinking in 2029 the sewage treatment works at the caverns can be commissioned. But of course we'll try to compress the timeline as much as possible. As the new sewage treatment works can be commissioned in 2029, we can stop the operations of a sewage treatment works in the existing site. But we need to be careful with the decommissioning and demolition of the existing sewage treatment site, because we have some tanks there and we need to make sure when we try to remove the tanks we are deodorizing the area in order not to cause nuisance. So we have basically 2 years planned for demolition of the existing site, and then we can release the site in 2031. But of course, if we can move up the timeline as much as possible, we will try our best to do so, and we'll make that happen. Thank you. Mr. Li Shenkeng, as another member said, the LegCo was consulted for this proposal a few times, and we are talking about the project of relocating Shatin sewage treatment works to the caverns. It's not exactly equivalent effort because these are vastly different projects. I do understand that much cost has been saved. I do appreciate that. But I want to know the exact figure that we have saved. And if we can make use of innovative technologies in caverns, how much efficiency are we achieving? Thank you. Mr. David Lam. We do think relocation is actually quite simple, so it is actually not an accurate description of the project, because we have new sewage treatment works and then we have to demolish the existing sewage treatment works. When we first asked for funding in 2020, we are asking for $40 to $50 billion. But we have all along after that been looking to compress the cost, which is why we have now in total asked for $32 billion, and it is quite a significant cost saving. And then we have saved in total 17% in cost. I will probably talk about the specifics later, but basically we have saved in procurement, and some of the costs have been absorbed by the departments in terms of efforts, but then the prices returned through tendering are actually lower, which is why we are able to save some costs. In terms of efficiency achieved, it's not just having a new sewage treatment works replacing existing sewage treatment works. The existing sewage treatment works have been in use for 40 odd years, and we have used some relatively outdated technologies where we are making use of some sludge digestion facilities, and now we are making use of some more innovative technologies where we make use of some biological reactions, and we have to use many hours, say 20 hours, to complete the whole process. With the new sewage treatment works facilities, we should be able to complete the process in 10 hours. Well, let me say something, Chair. We recently had a visit to the mainland with the chief executive. I think we can integrate education facilities in the sewage treatment works if possible. Yes, sure, Mr. David Lam. The caverns themselves will not be open to the public, but outside we have the administration building. We will have some exhibitions, and we should be able to accommodate some visits. We will perhaps have some galleries where we can showcase the achievements of Hong Kong in terms of infrastructure and INT, and maybe we can do something like that. Thank you, Mr. Lam Chen Sing. I note that in the budget, $700 to $800 million will be used to remove and actually demolish and decommission the existing Sha Tin sewer treatment works, and the decontamination works will also cost some $400 million. And honestly, if we are looking at the cost per square meter, that is quite a significant cost. It is often when the land is seriously contaminated that we need to conduct such works. So do we really need $400 million for the works? I also note in the paper the additional recurrent expenditure will be $380 million. And if we have the surcharges involved, we may also increase the relevant costs. You did not spell out a specific figure, but I note from a 2018 paper there will be additional recurrent expenditure resulting in an increase of surcharge by 0.13%. You have works in 4 phases. So the recurrent expenditure can go up to $700 million. If we have these factor into the increase in the surcharges, will that be a significant increase? Will that cause a burden on relevant companies, making the financial burden quite significant? I also want to follow up on what Mr. Qianhai said. You talked about in future some plans for the site for INT uses. Well, actually, that was the question of Mr. Qianhai. The Undersecretary only talked about how the site would be released in 2031. I want to ask, once the scope has been finalized for this project, will we have some plans for the site in future? Will we get a concrete timeline? Can the administration tell us more? I note that in the past 2 years, there has been while there are more plans disclosed before. So I want to ask, is it because of the tight fiscal position of the government we will not have accumulation done in Shui now? Thank you, Mr. David Lam. I will let the director talk about the surcharges plans in future. And I would say this, we are all along looking at the implementation of the surcharges, but in general we do have regard to the burden on members of the public in general as well as enterprises when determining the sewage charge and the trade affluent surcharge rates. As for the use of the existing site, we are planning to have 60 hectares in reclamation, and then in total we have 88 hectares for INT uses for the science park in future. And we are conducting land use planning studies at the moment. We do not have many details to disclose at the moment. We will make sure to report to the council when we have more details. But as I said, the site will be released in 2031, so there is plenty of time. Do you not have a timeline at the moment? Once the science park has conducted their studies, we will have more details. Do you have any figures on hand? We can provide them after the meeting. Excuse me, I'll let the director talk about the surcharges. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Regarding decontamination works, Indeed, there are more uncertainties in this regard. Usually when we receive the site, we conduct studies into the site. Then we'll have to decide on the scope as well as the quantity of the decontamination works. We have a budget. After the plant ceased operation, we'll have to look into the situation again. Then we'll have a more accurate figure. Thank you. Have you drawn reference from other experience? Will the demolition of the plants lead to an increase in the in the cost? Regarding the works in the Northern Metropolis, we have made the same assumptions, but I'd like to make it clear this is only a provisional estimate. As for future quantities, we'll have to look into the situation, conduct studies before we have a final estimation. Mr. Lam, do you need the administration to provide figures in relation to decontamination works, say demolition works $800 million and land decontamination works $400 million or so? So probably the administration may provide supplementary information after the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Stanley Lee. Thank you, Chairman. I've already read the papers. I'm concerned about odor control of the project after it has been approved. Residents in Ma On Shan have been expressing concerns about odor. I'd like to know the period of the reprovisioning of the plant. And it will have to maintain communication with residents when we undertake the project. Usually when we start new projects, usually they are much better than the existing or the old ones. For the daily handling quantity of sewage, it is actually the same as the quantity in the past. That is 340,000 meter cube. Cubic meter, I mean. Well, if the design treatment capacity is similar or comparable to the previous one, why do we still need to work on this project? We have a fiscal deficit. This figure is not a small one, so I'd like to ask about the urgency of the project. Well, I'll talk about the urgency of this project first. The Shantin Sewage Treatment Works has been in use for 34 years. The E&M facilities have been nearing the end of its lifespan. We do need to replace the existing treatment works. If we are not going to move the plants, we would have to spend more instead. We may have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to keep the plants in operation. This could probably last the operation of the plant for 2 more years. Repair and maintenance costs need to be considered as well. So if we do not have a new plant, the repair and maintenance costs of the old plant will be higher or will be more than having a new plant. That's why we are asking for funding approval from the Legislative Council today. It is time for us to reprovision or to demolish the existing treatment works. So why don't we take this opportunity to increase the design treatment capacity? We need to consider cost effectiveness when it comes to infrastructures. So we need to plan ahead in relation to long-term development. In relation to Shatin, Tai, Weima, Anshan, they are very mature neighborhoods. It's not very likely that their developments will see significant development. We have already factored in the development demand for these districts. We have already factored in scientific data, and we are of the opinion that the project is in line with the cost effectiveness. Otherwise, this may lead to a waste of infrastructures. When it comes to the relocation of the project, after we have completed the new plants in the caverns, after we have finished all works in relation to pipes, then the works will be moved to the caverns. We need to tread more cautiously. That is, we need to demolish the structures of 28 hectares, and we also need to conduct land decontamination works. We'll have to remain in communication with residents, and definitely we're going to reduce nuisance as soon as possible. We will also be implementing odor control measures. Say for tanks, we'll try our best to control odor, and we will also take measures in order to contain the spread of odor. We'll try our best not to affect residents when we perform the project. Thank you. The Undersecretary just now said very clearly that the issue of odor is close to our hearts. We're going to do a lot of preparatory work before we demolish the plant. We will clear the pollutants from the tanks, control odor before we start demolishing the plants. Then we will be in a better position to control odor in order that residents will not be affected. I'd like to talk about the design treatment capacity of 340,000 cubic meters. The works is providing service to 700,000 people, and we expect that the population will grow to 800,000 in 2041. And we are expecting a population growth. The design treatment capacity of the treatment works is 340,000 cubic meters. When Shatin was developed as a satellite town, the Shatin Sewage treatment works was commissioned. We needed to forecast the population growth of Shatin as a satellite town in 5 decades' time. There were a lot of uncertainties. That was why we put in place a design treatment capacity of 340,000 cubic meters. At present, we have the design treatment capacity of, we're handling the treatment of sewage of 290,000 cubic meters. Shatin is a very mature neighborhood. So we're confident that we can cope with the demand in the future. Thank you. Next, Mr. Edward Lau. Thank you, Chairman. This project was approved in the last term of the Legislative Council. I was one of the members expressing support for this project as well. The environment has undergone a lot of changes. The background of this project was that we were lacking land. Property prices were very optimistic. That is why the location of the treatment works was of high value. We need to consider the fiscal position of the government at present. Just now we talked about the INT Park and the reclamation issues. Sentinel has been given 20 hectares of land recently. We need to think whether they have capacity or urgency to have this size of the land. The northern metropolis is 300 km square large. At least we can say that we are not in the bottleneck of the development of Hong Kong right now. I'd like to know whether it's been decided that this piece of land is for INT development. After we have moved the sewage treatment works to a cavern, when there is no purpose assigned to this piece of land, is it possible for the government to receive rents from this or receive rental from this piece of land? At least we shouldn't leave it idle. When the project was approved on the last occasion, in stages 1 and 2, about 60% or 70% of the tenderers hit the target price. I'd like to ask about the tender price. This piece of land, Anderson, the government may have to release sites, but the development of caverns is probably quite costly. Unless necessary, I don't think that we need to take forward development projects with caverns, so I'd like the administration to respond in one go. Thank you. Undersecretary. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Edward Lau. We can only stop the operation of the existing plant when we have the new plant commissioned in 2029. The Science and Technology Parks doesn't have a timetable yet, but we won't leave the piece of land to idle. Rest assured, we will put the piece of land to gainful use. We won't leave it idle, simply put. Based on our experience, Santine Technopope has a lot of INT land. The Science and Technology Parks in Sha-Tin is very much sought after as well. They could be connected to form a connected harbor front. We need to consider the geographical location of the site as well. It's very rare that we can develop the land of science and technology parks as well. The sewage treatment works in the northern metropolis may not be put inside a cavern either. I understand members' concerns. If we take a macro perspective, putting it into a cavern is the most suitable proposal. We couldn't reprovision this sewage treatment works in situ, unless we are going to conduct reclamation and build the sewage treatment works on the reclaimed area. We need to consider the geographical location of Sha-Tin, and having the treatment works in a cavern is the most suitable proposal. On the cost, we have already reflected the return tender price. We are using the new engineering contract at present. When we manage to save costs, we'll share the saved costs with developers. We are trying very best to make good use of the new engineering contract in order to reduce the costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Next to speak, Dr. Lois Kwok. Thank you, Chair. I think for this project, we're at the final and the most critical stage. Before, we were only excavating in the caverns. Now we are actually building the sewage treatment works, and we have to demolish the existing sewage treatment works conduct land decontamination works for future development of the site. We have had much discussion, or should I say argument, with whether the relocation is appropriate. Some say that it should not be done because we have a deficit now. But I think we should continue to invest in infrastructure for the future when the government is in deficit. Actually, when the economy is bad, the government actually needs to spend more to boost the economy. The project is controversial. I know this because I was a district councillor for the district before. Many Shenzhen district residents were concerned with the relocation of the sewage treatment works to the area. It might cause a nuisance to them. But once they found out it's in the caverns, they are somewhat rest assured because the sewage treatment works will be located in caverns and there will not be odor because the odor will be encapsulated. In fact, the existing Shenzhen sewage treatment works does emit odor. We have the sewage treatment works of recent years making use of innovative technologies, thus being able to remove the odor, but the existing Shenzhen sewage treatment works still make use of technologies that cannot exactly remove the odor, which is why they have caused a nuisance to residents. The government has been criticized for not having a land reserve, but now they are trying to create more land. People are criticizing the government still. Right now, the government wants to develop a university town, and people say the university town plan is too small. We should have more space allocated to the university town. Well, actually, let me stop here. That's it for my comments. With new facilities, we should have more green elements. What are the green elements? Do we have energy-saving features? Are we making use of innovative green technologies for the sewer treatment works in the caverns? And some other members asked about land decontamination works. Can we compress the timeline for the works so that we can have the site released as soon as possible? Thank you, Mr. David Lam. Thank you. I'll let the director talk about the green elements. I do thank Dr. Low for giving his comments. I think the point is well made about the sewer treatment works being too old and making use of outdated technologies. It can't help but be a nuisance to residents. The site will be released in 2031. We would try to make good use of the site, but the important thing is we need to have the site released first. I'll let the director supplement my answers. Thank you. Thank you. At the access, we have some buildings, and on the rooftops, we will try to install solar panels or photovoltaic panels. As for drainage, we will have the water cooled before the water is released into the ocean. We will have the water cooling, water used for cooling. We also make use of digital chain and AI and various equipment to have round-the-clock monitoring of the operations of the facilities. We should be able to save manpower with this. It's good because if officers have to work in the caverns, we need ventilation, and if we have less officers working in the caverns, we should be able to save some costs in terms of ventilation. Whether we can compress the timeline, you haven't answered that question. Well, the time planned will be 2 years because right now the existing Shenzhen sewer treatment works have some 160 buildings, and as the Undersecretary said, we have potential contaminants in the tanks. We need to be careful when demolishing the structures. We will conduct an inspection later if we find out then that there is not as much contamination as we expected. We should be able to compress the timeline. Also, if we have commissioned the new sewer treatment works, or when we're about to start the operations of the new sewer treatment works, if we can decommission at least part of the existing sewer treatment works, we should be able to compress the timeline. We want to have this more flexible approach so that we can have somewhat of a buffer. Thank you. Mr. Kenneth. Thank you. I have 3 questions. We have been able to save $2.7 billion through direct procurement, according to the paper. I appreciate the Bureau's efforts. But I want to ask, will there be risks associated with the direct procurement approach? Will there be any delay in the delivery? Will there be other risks? Can you allay the concerns of the public to make sure with the savings in costs we are not taking on more risks? I also want the administration to talk about the advantages of the direct procurement approach, such as the savings in costs. I also note that for the project costs, we have contingency allocated. It is always the case that we will allocate a percentage of the project costs to the contingency, and because the project costs a lot, the contingency alone costs $1.1 billion. I want to ask, in the previous stages, we should have allocated some of the cost for contingency. So I want to ask, what is the previous contingencies usage situation? Have we been able to save some of that costs? And according to the paper, we have the recurrent expenditure that is additional to the recurrent expenditure at the moment at $300 million. So I want to ask, is it really additional to the existing cost or recurrent expenditure? Thank you. Let me first answer the questions, and I'll let the Drainage Services Department representative supplement my answers. I think it is, as Mr. Kenneth Fox said, we need to make sure we know about the particular area before we can practice the direct procurement approach. The Drainage Services Department is, of course, an expert in the area, so they have actually practiced global procurement when acquiring equipment, and because they are looking for equipment around the world, they have been able to get quite competitive prices. The department will be careful to make sure the delivery is not delayed in any way and that the quality is assured. Now, for contingency, we need to allocate contingencies because often we have to undertake works because of the demands of the district stakeholders that we did not anticipate. And it is often when we settle the accounts that we will find out how much of the contingency allocation is used. But I will see if the director has more information on hand and he can supplement my answers. Excuse me. As for the other question, for the additional recurrent expenditure, we are comparing the existing and new sewage treatment works, and right now the cost would be approximately $790 million. And there is an additional expenditure because the sewage treatment works will be in the caverns. There is an additional ventilation cost. Also, the existing sewage treatment works make use of outdated technologies. They are using bacteria to basically digest what is in the water, and it would take 17 to 20 hours to complete the process. In future, it takes only 10 hours to complete the process. So mainly it is because we will have an additional cost because of the newer technologies used. Thank you, Director. I'll ask him to supplement my answers. Thank you. The benefits of the direct procurement approach are very clear. We have been able to save significantly in the costs as reflected by the return tender prices. There are some cons essentially to the approach. We need to have clear delineation for the agreements between us and the suppliers. So we have been very careful when drafting up the agreements. We actually sought legal advice to eliminate any potential gray areas and make clear the relevant definitions. Right now, we do not have the labor and materials included in the cost. We only have the supplies cost factored in, which is why we also need to make sure the logistics arrangements are appropriate when conveying the relevant supplies. And we actually said with the new engineering contract model, we need to make clear the works process, when the materials will be conveyed, how the materials will be stored, and these have to be set out early on, and there has to be continuous monitoring thereafter to see if there are any deviations from the plans. If there are, both sides have to meet in order to account for the changes in the process and plans. There are also some interface problems. To eliminate the chance of such problems happening, we asked the suppliers to work closely with us. In fact, this is the first time the Drainage Services Department practiced the direct procurement approach in such a large-scale project, no less. Through our consultants, residents, site staff, we have monitoring. We also have officers deployed from the Drainage Services Department to monitor the progress of implementation of the project. As for contingency, after the last 3 funding applications were approved, we were given some contingencies for all 3 applications. If they are not used, the contingency allocations will be returned to the Treasury. But let me say this, the contingency allocations cannot be carried over from the previous stage. But as I said, the contingency allocations, if they are not used, they will be returned to the Treasury. As for another question on additional expenditure, we are making use of new technologies in the new facilities. That's why we will have new and additional expenditure. Can you provide more details about what you said or contingencies in particular after the meeting? Exactly. I want to ask about the information only. I'm not saying the contingency allocation should be carried over. Well, we can provide such details after the meeting.
Chairman, just one more remark. An additional $300 million. I hope that the administration will keep a close watch on expenditure. I'm not a technical professional worker. The design treatment capacity remains unchanged, but then with the employment of new technologies, the contingencies go up instead of go down. I'm no expert in this area, but I'd like to ask the administration. I hope that the administration will do its best to compress the costs. Well, new technologies help us to save more time. We will also be using new technologies to reduce operating costs. We'll do our best. Thank you. Next member, Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, but Mr. Gary Chan would like to speak first because he'll have to go to the EXCO meeting. Any objection, especially Mr. Chen Xiu-hong? If no objection, we'll let Mr. Gary Chan speak first. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, for letting me speak first. I'm not a member of the PWSC, but I live in Shantin as well. I'm a resident in Shantin myself. I'm not against this project, but I'm not sure whether this is the right time to undertake this project. This project, $12.9 billion, is the fifth time. Stage 1, $2 billion, and then $14 billion, and then $3.1 billion. The whole project costs $32.8 billion. This is a very costly project. If the government has sufficient money, no problem. The site could be released for INT use, but then at present we have a fiscal deficit. If some projects aren't very urgent, if there is no pressing need, we could probably save $10 billion or so. So I'd like the Undersecretary to tell us the urgency of this project. Is it possible to postpone this project? Could it be taken forward 2 to 3 years later? Well, Mr. Gary Chan, you weren't with us. Well, I understand my colleague has already asked his question, but I have another question after this one. Well, please proceed to the next question. I understand. Shantin Sewage Treatment Works, the repair and maintenance cost is about $150 million. Each year, it will cost some $530 million. So after moving the sewage treatment works to the cavern, administrative and management costs will be more expensive than the current costs. The project cost is expensive, but then the administrative cost is high as well. So why all the rush to undertake this project right now? You are not going to increase the sewage charge either. So is it a suitable time for us to pause? Shouldn't we wait until we get back on our feet when it comes to our fiscal position? Could the operating costs be lower? Thank you. This is the second member expressing the same view. Members support this project. Probably we can ask the Undersecretary to tell members once again your position. Mr. Gary Chen has other avenues to express these views as well. Undersecretary. Thank you, Mr. Gary Chen. I'll give the floor to Mr. Ringo Mok to talk about the details. We aren't just moving one plant to a new location. We need to build a new plant. The time used to treat sewage could be halved with new technology in a new plant. Another question is about the time. Can we wait? Can we pause? Well, let me put it this way. If we pause, we'll probably be spending more money. The plant has been in operation for 4 decades. E&M facilities are nearing their end of their lifespan. We haven't conducted any large-scale maintenance, otherwise the money would have gone to waste. The plant has been in operation for 4 decades or so. If we are going to conduct large-scale maintenance, it might cost hundreds of millions of dollars, but then they will only be able to last the operation of the plant for 2 more years. In case of any issues, any hiccups, there will be quite significant consequences. These sewage treatment works is serving residents in Taiwan, Shatin, Ma-on-Shan. It's about hundreds of thousands of residents. There could be significant impacts on the locality. If we are not going to take forward this project, not only could we not save money, probably we would be spending even more. E&M facility costs do fluctuate. So I'll give the floor to Mr. Rinkelmock to talk about other specifics. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Undersecretary. I understand the members' concerns. In relation to recurrent expenditure and operating costs, we are confident that there will be much room for reduction. We will be employing new technologies. It's in place in a lot of different overseas plants. We've been working with a lot of mainland experts that have been introducing a lot of technologies to us. That is digital twins. So we're confident that there will be room for further reduction in the overheads as well as other costs. Digital twins are innovative technologies. We only introduced the technologies of digital twins recently. In the coming 1 to 2 years, we'll be able to save costs with the introduction of the new technology digital twins in plants. There is additional requirement in relation to ventilation in caverns. We've been discussing the choice of the location in Shatin for a few times. In a developed area, we have chosen a suitable location to reprovision our treatment works. It's actually very difficult. Will it affect residents? We need to reduce nuisance and impacts on residents as far as practicable. Mr. Gary Chan, may the administration provide information in the Finance Committee, say how much the administration will be able to save? Every year, the administration is going to spend $500 million, and I believe even if you are going to repair and maintain the existing plan, it won't cost as much as $500 million. You don't have to reprovision the plan either. Probably you could have saved billions of dollars. Mr. Mock, could you provide supplementary information after the meeting? Yes, thank you. Next member, Mr. Chen Xiu-hong. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank the administration for working very actively together with me as well as other members. We've been in liaison on this project. The administration explained the technical aspect of this project to us. Now, in the PWSC, we need to examine this project. We shouldn't be discussing whether we should take forward this project or not. Based on my experience as an engineer, if we need to call this project to a halt and wait for a few more years, the costs may surge in the future. Including Hong Kong, a lot of places are facing challenges when it comes to economic development. Therefore, the return tender price reflects the market appetite. In the coming few years, when the economic situation is even poorer, probably the costs will decrease, but that is not the situation we want to see. Residents in Sha Tin have been making complaints about odor. So if we move the plant to caverns, it's actually beneficial to the community. The project cost is about $30 billion. And the operating costs are about $500 million. If the plant is going to be put into caverns, there will be more equipment such as lighting, ventilation, and so on, comparing with an open-air plant. I believe this is understandable. We need to understand this if we are going to move this plant into a cavern. We also need to make good use of public funds. The administration needs to work harder on managing or further compressing overheads. I believe digital twins bring a lot of room for minimizing costs. I hope that the administration will make good use of digital twins. At the next meeting of the Finance Committee, I hope that the administration will be able to provide us with figures. $7.8 billion for the installation of sewage treatment facilities. E&M facilities are very important when it comes to the handling of sewage. And I can see that the administration is thinking of innovative methods, say direct procurement. This is exactly one of the examples. Just now, the administration talked about three main concerns. Risk premiums will not be shouldered by the contractor anymore. It will be the administration that will shoulder the risk premium. And I believe we will always see situations where people pass the buck. What if you cannot finish the project? The works components are interrelated. Thank you, Mr. Chen Xiu-hong. We have been discussing this issue for a long time. Should we move the plant to the cavern? We have come up with this proposal exactly because we have considered the possible impact on residents. We're applying for a funding of $32 billion, and we are going to adopt a practice of direct procurement to save costs. We are confident that we are able to reduce the costs further. When it comes to the application, there are constraints as well. The department needs to be very familiar with the works components. Only then can they use the method of direct procurement. Mr. Ringo-Mok? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member, for your questions. Probably we'll have to go into greater detail. There are provisions in the contract. We will be adopting NEC, that is new engineering contracts. The government has been adopting the NEC for a long time. The introduction of the NEC has indeed changed the culture. contractors, staff members of the contractors. We have been able to develop mutual trust with construction workers in relation to provisions of the contract. We have added a clause of mutual collaboration, say for any party that has a good suggestion that could save costs when it requires the collaboration of another party. There is a mechanism in place for us to save costs across different contracts. The mechanism is written in black and white in the contract. Then the saved costs could be shared by different parties. This will incentivize different parties to save costs as far as possible. This will also encourage people to propose proposals that could save costs. This is the first time we adopt direct procurement in this project. So our whole team will work harder, and we will also keep liaising with staffers and construction sites as well as contractors. We'll work together to introduce staff members with international experience. Probably we'll have to recruit suitable personnel from overseas to provide opinions to us. We will also invite them to help us with our project. Thank you.
Chair, if you don't mind, I have a short follow-up. I asked the administration to provide the savings in costs. What is the breakdown, the $2.7 billion? We can actually provide an answer now. There are a few parts to the cost savings. With procurement, we have been able to save the most in E&M works. We now have several contracts, so we are able to save $1.7 billion for that, because we are taking this approach of not having labor and materials included. Because of price adjustments, we should be able to save more. In total, it will be $2.7 billion. Before, we talk about $16.5 billion in the estimate, and we are able to save $16.5 billion. Can they also provide a written response? I think you can provide the detailed figures after the meeting. Alright, we have discussed this item for over an hour. For members who wish to speak or who would like to speak for a second round, please come to this conference room and press the request to speak button. Next, Mr. Lo Cheng-hong. We have been discussing this item for quite some time. I heard two main views. Some say we should complete the final stage of the project, but some also said because the government is in such a tight fiscal position, is it necessary to complete this project? I think it is appropriate to complete the project, but it would be best to save costs. We actually visited a Guangzhou plant a couple of years ago. Many members were quite surprised that the facilities were located underground, and on top of that, on the ground level, there are gardens, and apparently the water will be transported to wetland and fish rearing. And the cost, apparently, when they were reporting to us, said it was 1/10 of the cost we have here. Why is that? And they are processing 75 tons in water, which is double the capacity we have here. Why? I know there are many factors at play making the cost of this project in Hong Kong higher than that in the mainland, but this is quite a significant difference. Can the administration tell us why? We are making use of secondary sewage treatment standards for the new works. Why not upgrade the sewage treatment works to even higher standards since we're putting it in the caverns? I also note for the DSD figures, the Shenzhen sewage treatment works compared to sewage treatment works in other areas. I'm talking about the existing one, of course. The capacity or the data seem to be much worse. We have much more in emissions than the sewage treatment works in other areas, such as the bacteria in the water as well as micropollutants. So I'm just asking if we can adopt tertiary standards for the new sewage treatment works, and can we have more uses for the treated water in future? Thank you. Mr. David Lam. As we said at an earlier occasion, it is hard to compare the projects undertaken in different places. But I would say this. We have compared our projects to other projects in Hong Kong. We have lower costs, unit costs, because we are practicing direct procurement. I think we should draw a comparison with other Hong Kong projects, and you can see that our project here is not that costly. As for whether we should upgrade the standards, it is always nice to upgrade the standards, but the operational costs will definitely increase. The Sewage plant adopts tertiary standards because the water discharge will be discharged in the more environmentally sensitive areas, such as the wetlands. I would like to say that for the adoption of secondary standards, it's actually not bad at all, because secondary standards will already make sure the environment will not be polluted. Excuse me, I was talking about what happened in the mainland being secondary standards being adopted at the plant. We actually saw the Guangzhou plant. It made use of innovative technologies. So what were the technologies used, and the cost was significantly lower? I just want to know what technologies the plant was using and why they had such a significantly lower cost. Can the director give us some information? We actually liaise with the plant operators, and we actually looked into the technologies used. We actually did some calculations in Hong Kong, in different places, because there are different costs of living. It would definitely be higher. And if we are to conduct the sewage treatment works, it would already be double the cost. If we have to put the facilities underground, it would be more than that. As for whether we have other uses for the treated water, in Shenzhen, we can use the treated water for ecological compensation. It can also be used in cleaning the channels. If we are to adopt tertiary standards, there will be additional costs. But we will continuously review the situation if necessary. If we need to adopt higher standards for the sewage treatment works, we will definitely consider the option. Mr. Ko Wai Kang, I also visited the Guangzhou plant Mr. Luke mentioned. many members were wowed by the project because as we understood, the residents' feedback were incorporated, which is why the facilities are located underground. And on the ground level, you can only see that there is a slight slope there. People won't even know there is a plant underground. So for this project we have here, I think we are essentially taking the same approach because we will no longer be able to see the sewage treatment works in plain sight. It will also help with controlling odor. It is also a solution to the issue of the sewage treatment works nearing the end of its life cycle, and we are also making an improvement by releasing the site. We have estimated that we would need in total $32 billion. We have already spent $20 billion. It just makes sense that we should complete the final stretch. And I note in the paper there are some savings in costs. I think we should undertake the project, so it is always nice to save some costs. So we have the civil engineering works being separated from the E&M works. That has helped save costs. I also understand that the direct procurement approach is used when acquiring some equipment and some technologies. Why did we adopt this approach of having subcontracting, this new subcontracting approach? It seems that it has been adopted for mainly saving costs, but before this approach was used for occupational safety and health purposes. So I want to ask, when will you adopt this approach, or is it the case that in future you will try as much as you can make use of the direct procurement approach? Thank you, Mr. David Lam. It depends on the circumstances. If we can save costs, then we will try to adopt this approach. If it doesn't save costs, we may not adopt this approach. We also need to have expertise. As I said earlier, the DSD is definitely an expert in sewage treatment. So they practice global procurement to save costs, achieving cost effectiveness. So there are benefits to this approach in this case, which is why we use this. We can also try to make use of the direct procurement approach in making use of, say, reinforced steel, but then we need to make sure we consider the storage of the materials as well when we practice this approach. I will let the director supplement my answers. As much as possible, we want to separate the different works to minimize costs in subcontracting. I will let the director talk about why in this project we can separate the works. Well, we actually mainly practice separation of works in terms of E&M works. We often need to get E&M equipment. If labor and materials are included, the cost will be high, and we have to procure such locally. If we separate them, we can just purchase the equipment in different parts of the world, and we have the expertise in these areas, so we are able to see which supplier may be more competitive. As for whether we can make use of the direct procurement approach in future, there are definitely benefits to this approach. We will try to explore the different options in future projects, and we will, as I said earlier, continuously review the implementation of this approach, and we will conduct a midterm review in 1 or 2 years, and then we will conduct a final review at the end of the project. Mr. Edward Leung.
Thank you, Chairman. I believe members of the public are the most concerned about the asphalt pipes of 700 to 800 kilometers, as well as other issues such as increase in the healthcare fees, as well as the $2 schemes. If we are going to move the Shenzhen plant to caverns, it's going to cost $13 billion. If we can delay this project, then if we can solve all the problems at one go, probably members of the public may think whether it is really urgent to do so. Just now, the administration said we might have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on the repair and maintenance of the existing plant. What the administration said doesn't seem to be reasonable. We'll be spending $50 billion or so on this project. Can the administration undertake not to increase the sewage charge? Members of the public have been complaining about the lack of subsidies provided by the administration. If the sewage charge is going to be increased, it seems that the public will not benefit from this project. It seems members of the public will not support this project. There are other projects with more pressing needs. This project isn't the most urgent. I'd like to remind members, in this PWSC, we discuss the technical aspect of the project. Members should have already expressed their opposition against this project in the panel meetings if they do not agree with this project. I already said that the panel on development supports the submission of this project to the PWSC for scrutiny or for examination. I'd like to see if the administration has anything to say. Mr. David Lam, thank you. This is a very well thought out decision of the administration to move the Shenzhen sewage treatment works to caverns. There aren't any other better options. Unless we're going to reclaim waters and then we build yet another new treatment works. I believe this is equally difficult to accept by the public. I have heard Mr. Edward Leung just now. $50 billion. In 2020, we projected that the cost will be about $400 to $500 billion. But then, at present, we have managed to reduce costs to about $32 billion. Well, if we're not going to move the treatment works, probably we will be spending more. We wouldn't be able to save costs. We may have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars just to run the plant for a few more years. If we are not going to complete the project, we may be actually spending more. Let's just leave alone the fact that the cavern will be put to waste. So you have already factored in the increase in the overheads, right? Yes. For sewage charge, we need to take a macro perspective of sewage charge. As I said, the administration will keep in view the implementation of the sewage charge. We apply the principle of polluters pay, and we will also take into account the affordability of the public. The administration will, in due course, review sewage charges. If there are any updates, we will come back to the council and brief members. Thank you. Ms. Nixie Lam. Thank you, Chairman. Members question the urgency of the project. The public oftentimes ask us about the project cost of different projects. Just now, we already said that the project would cost $32 billion. $12.9 billion. We have managed to save $700 million, but then the design treatment capacity doesn't increase. But the annual repair and maintenance cost of caverns is about $500 million. In recent years, there hasn't been any repair and maintenance. What if there is no additional money to build a new one? If you are going to conduct repair and maintenance regardless, is the cost still be around $200 million? As the PWSC, we need to calculate the costs well. We also need to take into account the urgency of the project. The administration said that they had already started the project. But then you need to justify the urgency of the project. Recently, the administration has already increased different costs. What about the risks for the existing treatment works? What if the plant suddenly collapses? What's the potential impact on the public? $30 billion or so. Now, if we are going to approve $12 billion of dollars, the figures simply don't add up. Mr. David Lam, I agree with Ms. Nixie Lam. We move the plants to caverns. Well, let's save the risks to later. When we move the plants to caverns, we improve the environment. We use a new plant, new facilities, so efficiency will also be enhanced. The design treatment capacity will stay the same, but then the speed will be improved. The hours required will be reduced from 17 to 20 hours to 10 hours. What if we are not going to relocate a plant? Indeed, we will have to perform repair and maintenance. At least we will have to spend $500 million in the coming 2 years. The existing treatment works has been in place for 4 decades to 5 decades, and we are simply going to pay $500 million just to extend the life of the existing treatment works for probably 2 more years. Regarding risks, earlier on, there were news headlines about problematic tanks. A lot of stench affected residents in Ma On Shan. Let me give you an example. A very old car might still be able to be operating on the road, but it may stall any time. Taiwan Shati Ma On Shan, a total of 700,000 strong population, and the Shatin Sewage treatment works is serving this very large district, about 700,000 population. Well, can I add something? $500 million one time per year, or for 2 years in total, Mr. Rengomok? Earlier on, we had a target of 2029. That is, with the commissioning of the new plant, the operation of the old plant could be suspended and could be demolished. for facilities or equipment that were nearing the end of their life, we wouldn't replace them anyway. That is because the old equipment couldn't be, the new equipment wouldn't be able to be used in the new plant. That is because these pieces of equipment are going to be tailor-made. We had a target of 2029. That is the target we all along had. Just now we mentioned $500 million on the emergency repair and maintenance, plus fixed recurrent expenditure of about $200 million of a secondary sewage treatment works. We have been exercising prudence or restraint when it comes to carrying out works. We have been adopting the method of minimal repair and maintenance in order to keep the old plant in operation until 2029. Thank you. 2 more members are going to speak. One member, Dr. Loa Kwok, is going to speak in the second round. If no other members would like to speak, well, we have one more member, Mr. Louis Long, then we will proceed to a vote. Next member, Ms. Connie Lam. Thank you, Chairman. In relation to the relocation of Shatin Sewage Treatment Works to caverns, it has been in discussion by the Legislative Council for a number of times. I express support for this project. As the Undersecretary said, the original treatment works, there are issues in relation to stench or odor. It affects a total of 700,000 residents in Shatin, Ma'anshan, Taiwan. Hong Kong doesn't have a lot of experience when it comes to caverns projects. Upon the completion of this project, this will be a world-leading project. It could be a reference for overseas projects. I hope that this site will be released as soon as possible for, say, healthcare purposes or recreational purposes. But while we are expediting the work progress, occupational safety or the safety of construction workers is close to my heart. Recently, we have been having scorching hot days. How hot is it in caverns? There are workers working in caverns. How high is the risk? What about ventilation? In the course of construction, is it possible that there will be issues with ventilation leading to more risks on the part of workers? If caverns are going to be world-class examples, what about galleries, exhibitions, or educational facilities upon the completion of the project? Can we let primary and secondary school students visit these galleries? Is it possible to let students visit these facilities just like students visited the treatment plant in Dongguan? Thank you.
Undersecretary, I thank Ms. Lam for her support. We attach great importance to occupational safety and health during construction. We had some LegCo members visit the site. I think the temperature in the caverns is actually lower, maybe because it was shielded from the external environment. There's not much dust in the construction process either. But as there is no ventilation, we'll make sure to put in place a good ventilation system. what's the other question? Oh, educational facilities. We have in the administration building some public exhibition galleries as well as public facilities. We do not plan on opening the caverns to the public because there may be some hazards, which is why we are housing the exhibition facilities in the administration building. We are communicating with district stakeholders to make sure we are telling the good stories of the facilities and works and the area. If you have any suggestions, please let us know. Thank you. Dr. Junius Ho. Chair, I very much appreciate the Bureau taking an approach to compress the costs. You can look at Annex 4. We have seen, in comparison with other projects, we are given a much lower costs. But we have 9 sewage treatment works in Guangdong or Guangzhou. And apparently the facilities are very advanced with a lower cost. And when asked about the comparison drawn with the project, the administration said we should compare only projects in Hong Kong. But we have to understand why there is such a significant difference in cost. I do appreciate the efforts made by the administration in saving costs, but we need to appreciate how they're achieving some great results with significantly lower costs. The visit was actually led by the chief executive. The visit was undertaken 2 years ago. The water treatment is done automatically. And on the ground level, the paved surface looks so nice. There was no odor at all. How are they able to achieve such cost effectiveness? We are just separated by the Shenzhen River, so why is there such a significant difference? I think it is great that we are saving costs, so I'm already giving you a thumb. Please do more so that I can give you both thumbs. Both thumbs up. I also want to say for the recurrent expenditure figure, it is worrying. Seeing also that we have a tight fiscal position, also with contingency, is it possible that we can remove that altogether? Because it seems that we are giving you a blind check by giving you a contingency allocation. I think you should make adjustments. Even if you are to have a contingency allocation, you should have a lower percentage. Can you maybe have just a contingency allocation of 3%? I think it will sit well with many people if it's just 3%. Also, with the staff costs, the consultant is already charging $52 million. The resident site staff would cost $800 million. That is a significant cost. Why do we need to go through the consultant? Because they are apparently being paid government pay scales, but in the private sector, the cost can be much lower. I do not agree with this. In fact, you would consider the lowest bids when it comes to bidding, the tendering of consultants. You only look at the cost. Why is it that for resident site staff you do not practice the same approach? For $800 million, I think there is much room for lowering the costs. I think $300 million would be an appropriate figure. And if you can cut contingency allocation as well, you would have already saved 10%. Thank you. Mr. David Lam, I thank Dr. Junius Ho for your understanding and your support. We have tried hard to lower the costs. We talked about the Guangzhou plant earlier. And we recently went to the panel. We talked about how we are trying to compress construction costs in Hong Kong. We have tried one approach being the direct procurement approach. We have also tried to have standards set. We have in future some institute that we can lower the costs, the Building Technology Research Institute. But I also want to say this. We would, after the meeting, provide a response on how we made use of the contingency allocation before. We haven't used much of the contingency allocation, to be honest, but I think it is only prudent for us to set 10% as the contingency allocation. It's all about striking a balance. We can't have too high a percentage for contingency allocation, but we also need a high enough percentage to account for unanticipated expenses. I have all along been asking for the administration to have a contingency allocation that is set with reference to the project itself instead of having an across-the-board percentage. I hope the government will conduct more research and enhance awareness by publicity of the contingency allocation. I will now ask the director to address the member's question on resident site staff costs. Thank you, member, for the questions. We are making use of parallel tendering in this project, so the prices here are returned tender prices. As for resident site staff costs, as you may have observed, we have already saved $100 million in resident site staff costs. We did not compromise the scope of the works or the safety of the works. But we will see if we can compress the resident site staff costs further. We have already saved $100 million in resident site staff costs. We actually cut half of that budgeted cost. We will try to look into different options to compress the costs. As for contingency allocation, it will only be used when necessary. And we're practicing the direct procurement approach on this occasion. We have some expenditure unaccounted for, so there may be some unanticipated expenditure that would require the contingency allocation, but we will try as much as possible not to use up that allocation. Permanent Secretary, Mr. Lau would like to speak. Mr. Ricky Lau. Thank you. We do understand members' concern about the contingency allocation, and we actually have a subcommittee looking into reviewing the relevant costs to see how we can, in our process, do better. We expect within this year the review will be completed. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Louis Lung. Thank you. I supported this when this was discussed at the panel on development, and I continue to support this project. I do understand the costs will be significant because the project is of a large scale, but we have already managed to save some costs. I note from the approach taken, according to paragraph 6 of the paper, you will have a cross-disciplinary team managing the project, probably because of the risk involved in taking a new approach. I also note in Annex 3 you have a time or enclosure 3, the implementation program. You can see how complex the project is from the different works mentioned in the enclosure. Some members talked about the contingency allocation. The contingency allocation may not be needed, or we will be able to spend less of that if the project is managed well. So I heard the director say that there are officers deployed from the department for management of the project. I also note, according to the paper, a consultant has been engaged. What is the division of work between the different parties? For such a large-scale project, if we can do well in project management, we will ensure prompt delivery of different parts of the project, and we will be able to save costs. So can you tell me more about the division of work between the consultant and the works officers? How is the interfacing working? Thank you. Thank you. When construction is undertaken, we will have a dedicated team from the Drainage Services Department forming a team with the resident site staff. The team basically will not have sites. They will all work together to do well for the project. And as I do agree with what the members said, we need to manage the project well. And as I said, we will have officers forming a team with the resident site staff to manage the project well. Mr. Louis Leung, I think this is really important. And I hope you can learn from this experience and apply it to other works projects. I do wish you well. I do support this proposal. The cost is significant, but I think if the works are to be undertaken later, it may even cost more. Thank you. Dr. Lo Wai Kwok speaking for the second round. I'll give you 3 minutes. Thank you, Chair. I have a happy question to ask. We have the first sewer treatment works in the caverns in Stanley. The facilities were commissioned 30 years ago. The good thing is people didn't even know that there were the sewer treatment works in Stanley, meaning it has not caused any nuisance. Of course, there were student visits, so some people might know about it. So I want to ask if you will hold some celebratory activities for the Stanley sewer treatment works. Will you have more visits arranged? Many members asked about the project cost. I think we have to understand and appreciate we have cut the cost in total by approximately $10 billion. And with the direct procurement approach taken, we have seen a breakthrough, and it also shows how the department has been responsible. It also requires coordination with the suppliers so that the materials are supplied promptly, with the suppliers' excuses not tolerated, if they are giving excuses, of course. I will not repeat what I said about the project costs. We have, for the different parts of the Process Development Bureau, reviewing if there's any room for improvement. I think we need to appreciate their efforts. For resident site staff, what they are doing, some members may not know what the resident site staff is doing. I think the administration can meet with those members after meeting to explain to them what the resident site staff is doing. Resident site staff, when they hear what the members said, may not be happy because they are not just construction workers. They are professionals working closely with the government, controlling the relevant operations to make sure adequate checks are conducted before the next stage works are undertaken. They play a very important part in the process. If members have reservations about the work of the resident site staff, the administration should explain to those members what the resident site staff is doing. I am a representative of the sector, so I think we need to make such clarifications. For the works, the financial secretary said we would have the project's sums increased from $70 billion to $200 billion. It is, of course, we are trying to invest in the future by building more infrastructure, but it is also about supporting the construction industry. If we do not provide such support, do you ask the construction workers to obtain CSSA? Thank you. Under Secretary.
Thank you. We're willing to provide assistance if resident site staff require so. And we are actually the same team with the contractor managing the contract. We work as a team. Their contributions count. We need the help of contractors. We might not be working in the administration together, but we are the same team. Well, regarding Stanley Sewage Treatment Works, I was actually working on Hong Kong Island back then, and we will go back and think how we can celebrate the anniversary of the Stanley Sewage Treatment Works. Thank you. Dr. Junius Ho. Second round, 3 minutes. Thank you. Well, we need to enhance speed efficiency while at the same time save costs. Dr. Low said that you're doing a good job. I'm not saying that you aren't doing a good job. We are down to earth. My questions are pragmatic. Well, I have no complaints when the administration attaches importance to construction site staff members. We shouldn't adopt any double standards. Other professionals aren't being treated equally. Two-envelope approach, the lowest bid usually wins, and that is the truth. These are indeed insults. I go along with Dr. Low. The administration should treat all parties equally, should treat all sectors equally. Don't just favor the construction sector. We need to be fair. This is the yardstick we should go by. I'd like to take this opportunity to talk to the administration now that Mr. Ricky Lau, Permanent Secretary for Development, is with us. I hope that you will conduct a comprehensive review. Well, say for official receivers, when one works on a bankruptcy case, it's free of charge. Well, I'm not insulting any professional. When it's free of charge, does it mean the quality isn't good? We need to take a macro perspective. Well, Chairman, that's all I want to say. I believe everyone is just trying to express their own views. We should spend within our means. We should only spend whenever we need to. We aren't targeting anybody here. Any secretary, any reply? I understand members have their own concerns. I thank members for your constructive comments. We are grateful to members for your views. Thank you. If members have no further questions, I now put this item to a vote. Members in favor of the proposal in PWSC 2025-26-8, please raise your hands. Those against it, please raise your hands. No. I think the majority of members who have voted support this proposal. I declare this proposal passed. On whether the Finance Committee should further discuss this item, I now put this proposal to a vote in accordance with paragraph 41A of the Rules of Procedure for the PWSC. This subcommittee recommends the Finance Committee to further discuss the proposal in PWSC 2025-26-8 that has been passed by this subcommittee. I remind members, if this item is passed, it means this subcommittee does recommend the Finance Committee to further discuss this paper. If, however, it is negatived, it means we do not recommend the Finance Committee to further discuss this paper. Members who support this motion, please raise your hands. Ten members. Those against it, please raise your hands. I think the majority of members who have voted support this motion. I declare this motion passed. This subcommittee recommends the Finance Committee to further discuss this paper, that is PWSC 2025-26-8. That is the end of the discussion of this item. Thank you, administration representatives, for joining us. Now we're moving on to the next agenda item. Before we start our discussion, let's take a break for 10 minutes. We've been discussing this agenda item for about 2 hours. We'll resume the meeting at 10:35.